Here comes one of the weirdest parts about Mach 1 is it automatically wants to accelerate on taxi speed. So to counterbalance that, when the taxi speed is accelerating, hit the down key. Don't hold it, just hit it, and that should counterbalance it to about 25 knots taxi speed, or 50. Okay, here we have a Mach 1 on takeoff roll. It's pretty much the same as any other aircraft taking off. It has a pretty long takeoff roll, but it's pretty normal. This plane gets off the ground at about 250 knots. See the climb angle there, and as I mentioned later on in the video, the landing gear, you can't always see it coming up. This right here is one of those occasions that you can't see the gear up, in which case your co-pilot may tell you. This plane right here is climbing to about 2,000 feet, which on Roblox that's equal to a good amount more than 2,000, where it will go supersonic, and that's about a minute into its flight. When the plane goes supersonic, nothing really changes except for the climb and descent rate is a lot greater, and it is now supersonic and crossing the ocean in a few minutes. Here you see a Mach 1 on approach. The engine is coming off. When a Mach 1's landing, the engine needs to be either off or at idle power so that it will decelerate effectively. The plane is still a good couple miles away from the airport, which is allowing it to slow down a good amount. With a Mach 1, a steep nose down attitude is not needed because of its speed. It's already decelerating at it's already descending at an extreme rate while holding its speed. You can see the landing gear is not yet down. It is descending out of 1,000 feet. It is already lining up for approach even though the runway is not yet seen. The plane is now at a speed of about 400 miles per hour and still decelerating. Once you hit the stall speed, and if you are not yet at your destination, you should turn the engine back on and have it go a little bit over the deceleration speed so that it'll stay airborne while not picking up massive amounts of extra speed, because you don't need that on landing. Here you see it's coming in for approach, still a few miles out and decelerating. Landing gear is still up, and if you want, you can test the landing gear a few times to make sure it's down while you can still see it, because with the Mach 1 a lot of times you can't see the landing gear, but in this case the camera was in a position where you could. So here it shows a few landing gear tests in a moment here, and here comes the engines back on to power it up a little bit. These have just reached that stall speed. Now when landing, once landing comes up here, you can see landing gear down now. When landing, you want this plane actually to kind of stall out onto the runway because it has very high landing speed. Landing speed of about 250 knots. You see it here coming in. It looks a lot slower than it actually is because of lag caused by the video. It stinks. Now, I do recommend when flying this plane to turn down the volume on your computer because this thing's a loud plane. You can still see it's pretty far out from the runway. Just test the landing gear there. Runway should come into view any second now, and notice how he's already lined up almost perfectly under that runway. There's the stall speed warning. And you'll see how that comes up right here, right before it hits the ground, the stall speed warning. You need to actually stall the plane out a little bit onto the runway, or at least have it at the stall speed when it hits the ground, so it'll come to a complete stop a lot faster than it normally would. You see him here lining up, trying not to move around the control column very much. See the stall speed warning coming on. Landing gear is down. Engines are not quite at stall speed yet. Now they're at stall speed. Stalls out onto the runway. And a near perfect landing. Near perfect.